Hello everyone, students. We will be today discussing about two additional experiments after the last class. Today our experiments will be related to the aggregate sizes. And aggregate size generally we measure through three properties. One is elongation, one is the flakiness, and another is the angularity. So we'll be conducting all of these three tests in this session, but today we'll be focusing on the first two, that is the elongation and flakiness, these two properties. So these two properties we'll be focusing on today, and these two are the desired experiments for today we will be learning. So first of all, I will be starting with experiment 4, which is Flakiness Index. So determination of Flakiness Index. So of which we will be determining this Flakiness Index. We will be determining the Flakiness Index of aggregates. Okay, so in general, I think you know what is angularity, whether the particle is angular or not, this angularity, but we are not focusing on this here. We are rather focusing on the flakiness. What is flakiness? You know what is flakiness? You know about cornflakes. We say, why flake? Flake means what? Flake is related to the thickness of any particle. So if I say this is a 3D particle, for example, if it is a 3D particle, this dimension is known as the thickness of this. That is the least dimension. The least dimension is related to the flakiness. So as much, if this least dimension is less than the usual shape, then in compared with the other two dimensions, that is the length and width. So in case of aggregates, you know, you cannot fix any length or width in any dimension, but yes, there will be a length and width, as these aggregates will be slightly rounded in shape. So as it is of a rectangular particle or rectangular shaped any particle, you cannot judge actual width or length, but obviously you can judge the least dimension, that is the thickness of this particle. So we are saying that if this least dimension is less than the usual dimension, usual size of any particle, then we will be denoting this particle as flaky particle. We'll be saying this is a flaky particle. Okay, and what will be the measurement? Actually, we will be going to discuss. And what about the elongation? As you know that there will not be any definite pattern, length or width of any particle, but you can judge the maximum dimension. This is the maximum dimension. This will be for this particle. So if I say this is a particle, this will be this will be the maximum dimension, the largest dimension of this particle. So you will see here. If it is 3D, then you will also judge whether this is greatest dimension of this particle or not. So in all cases, the maximum dimension will be treating if this maximum dimension is greater than the usual dimension of this particle or the average dimension of this particle, we will be saying that this particle as an elongated particle. Elongated particle. Okay, so this is elongated particle, and in terms of thickness we will be calling any particle as flaky particles. So flaky particles or elongated particles, or flaky aggregate or elongated aggregate. So this is our concern. So if we are now focusing on flaky particles, so flaky particles, for categorizing this thing we are following British standard, for aggregates. So for British standard experiments we are also using British sieves. So for this experiment we will be restricted within the aggregates. The aggregates will be passing through 63.00 millimeter sieve, and the particles which will be passing through 63 millimeter sieve and retaining, which will be retaining on 6.3 millimeter of sieve. So 6.3 millimeter of sieve. So it will be retaining on 6.3 and passing through 63. So not retaining on 63, please remember this thing. It will not be retaining on 63, rather it will be passing through 63 millimeter sieve. So if it is 63 millimeter sieve, then the aggregates will be passing through this, will be taken as the sample for this experiment, and those which will be retaining on the 6.3 millimeter sieve, these in between these two, passing through it and retaining on this. So those particles which are passing through it and retaining on this sieve. So in between these two there may be multiple numbers of sieve within this multiple number of sieves will be within this. So all these particles will be taken as the sample, and the usual definition of flaky particles will be we will be calling a aggregate particle as flaky, will be called flaky particle when the least dimension will be less than 0.6 of their nominal size. So this is the usual definition for the flaky particles. So now question arises, what is nominal size? So let's define the nominal size. As you know that whenever we will be conducting the test, we will be testing whether a particle is flaky or not using a spatial apparatus that is known as thickness gauge. And for elongation index, we will be conducting experiment using the length gauge. So the thickness gauge we are talking about in case of flaky particles. In this case, before conducting this experiment, we will be analyzing with sieve. So sieve analysis will be there. So after sieve analysis, so let's first define the usual sieve, British sieve sizes which will be used for this test. That will make this perception, this concept clear for us. So first of all, we will be using 63 millimeter. So all the particles passing through this will be taken. Then we'll be using 50 millimeter. Then we'll be using 37.5 millimeter. Then we'll be using 28 millimeter. Then we'll be using 20, then 14, then we'll be using 10, and finally 6.3 millimeter. These are the standard British sieves we will be using throughout our experiment. Okay, so while using these sieves, we will be analyzing the sieve so that we will be getting the particles which will be retaining on this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. So first particles which will be retaining on this 50 millimeter sieve, we will be calling it passing through 63 millimeter. Passing through, we'll be calling it passing through 63 millimeter and retaining on 50 millimeter sieve. Okay, so this sieve particles, aggregate particles which will be retaining on 50 millimeter sieve and passing through 63 millimeter sieve, those will be taken for the verification of flakiness using the thickness gauge, and in that case the particle size is in between 63 millimeter to 50 millimeter. That's why the nominal size is the average size of these two sieve size we are dealing with. So whenever we are dealing with this range of particles, the nominal size will be average of these two. In all cases the definition remains same. So if I ask you what will be the nominal size for the aggregates passing through 63 millimeter and sieve and retaining on 50 millimeter sieve, you will simply tell that it will be the average of these two, and which will be approximately, what will be the average of these two? Let's calculate. 63 plus 50 divided by 2. So it will be 50, it will be 56 point, it will be 33.9, it will be actually it will be actually 56.5 millimeter. So this is the mean size, this is the nominal size of the for the aggregates in between this range. So by definition, we will be calling the aggregate is flaky if the least dimension, that is the thickness of that particle, which that will be less than 6.6 of the nominal size of the 0.6 of the nominal size of the that range. So if I ask what will be the condition, what will be the opening if the particles are less than that, will be treated as flaky for this range 63 to 50, that will be 0.6 multiplied by this value, and which will give you 33.9 in return. So we have a we have a we have a special equipment for this test. This one will be used for Flakiness Index, for which this is actually the opening for 63 millimeter to 50 millimeter particle size ranges, and this opening is nothing but the 33.9, and for a tolerance there is a tolerance level which is kept as plus minus 0.3. So it will be plus minus 0.3 millimeter. For each of the opening there will be openings like this. So in each case. So for the next one it is passing through 50 millimeter and retaining on 37.5. So in similar manner we will be taking average of this and multiplying 0.6 with that will give plus minus 0.3 millimeter range, will give the opening of this one. So this instrument is known as the thickness gauge, as we will be measuring the thickness. This is called the thickness gauge, as we'll be calling it thickness gauge, as we'll be testing whether the thickness is less than this one or not. So what will be our effort? We will be trying to pass the particles through this one. So remember, whenever we have the particles retaining on 50 millimeter and passing through 63 millimeter after sieve analysis, we will be trying to pass those particles through this opening in any manner. So if this is the particle, you will be trying to pass this particle within this one in any direction. If any direction these particles goes through this opening, then separate these as flaky particles, and if it is not, then you keep it separated as not flaky particles. And whenever you will be testing these particles passing through 50 and retaining on 37.5 millimeter aggregate, then you will be try to pass those all particles through this opening, whether the particle passes through this one or not. If it passes through this in any direction, by rounding this up to 360 in all possible manner, you will be trying to pass this through this opening. If this passes through that opening, then you will treat it as flaky and keep it combined with the previous one, with this one. So all the flaky particles, just while resting, will be trying to pass through the specific opening, but once it passes through this, you will be keeping it as flaky particles as a whole, and if it is not, then keep those as not flaky particles in another one. Okay, so the total flaky particles we need to know, and the non-flaky particles, this will combinedly give you a value, and the amount percentage of flaky will give you the flakiness index in turn. Although there are some exceptions, there are some conditions obviously there, but that's why we need to focus more on this. So first, if I say, as we are conducting the two tests, the preparation being same, we can say this is experiment 4 plus experiment 5, 2 as a whole, as the preparation will be same. So that experiment 5 will be determination of what? Elongation index. Okay, so the preparation before we pass those particles through different gauges being the same, the two tests are discussed together. So in case of elongation index will be using this one, and this is called the length gauge, as we'll be verifying or testing the length of those particles, that is the greatest dimension of any particle. So I think by this time I have clarified what is exactly the flakiness is. Now we'll be going further to flakiness index. But before that, the calculation also being the same, so I will be discussing something about the elongation index as well. So what is the condition for which we will be denoting any particle as elongated particle or not? The condition is again the greatest dimension. In this case, greatest dimension of any particle, if it is greater than 1.8 millimeter, sorry, not millimeter, 1.8 times of the nominal size of the aggregate, then this will be called, denoted as elongated particles. Okay, so remember this, in both cases it is not greater than or equals to or less than or equals to. This will be greater than, and that will be the previous one less than 0.6 nominal size, and this one is greater than 1.8 nominal size, and this will be called as elongated particle. So if you find that the nominal size multiplied by 1.8, the greatest dimension of any particle being greater than this one, then you will be denoting it as elongated particle. And how to judge this one? In similar manner, you will be getting 63 millimeter sieve and passing through 63 and retaining on 50 millimeter sieve. For this one, there is a specific opening in the elongation, the length gauge, this one. So in any case, you will be trying to pass after keeping the particle here. You will trying to pass this. You will try to not pass through the particle not passing through this one. So in any case, in any direction, so if you have the particle, this is the particle, so you might be able to passing the particles through there, but you will be trying not to pass this particle. So for this, you will try all possible direction. If you find in any direction it is not going through this opening, then keep it separated as elongated particles. Okay, and if you are able to pass it anyway in all possible direction, you are not able to restrict this through these two stands, then keep it as not elongated. So finally, the total percentage of elongated will be the elongation index of that sample, keeping some exception which we'll be discussing now. So in general, the percentage of the elongated particles will be the elongation index. And remember again that when for specific sieve range, you will be using the specific sieve opener. In all cases, there will be written, although it is not shown there or you cannot see it here, there will be written or marked on these gauges the opening, the nominal size or the sieve sizes passing and retaining for opening for each of these openings. So you'll be able to see and you'll not get confused while passing through. Just remember, you should keep every sieves separated so that whenever this is 50 millimeter retaining, so you will be passing it through this. It will be marked there, so don't be confused. 63.63 to 63 millimeter sieve to 50 millimeter sieve, so it will be written there. Also nominal sizes will be written there, so you will be able to, the nominal size multiplied by 6 will be marked upon there, so you'll be able to identify. Just you have to separate your 50 millimeter with the standard sieve retained particles, then you will be passing all this, trying to pass this thing through that and separate it. For elongation index also try to pass through this. If it is passed, then keep it as not elongated. If you are somehow able to restrict it, then keep it as elongated particles. And the range is 1.8. so if for 63 millimeter British sieve and 50 millimeter British sieve, what will be the nominal size? As we have calculated before, the nominal size will be what? It will be 56.5, and 1.8 multiplied by 56.5 will give you 1.8 multiplied by 56.5 will give you the 101.7, will give you the actual range for the actual opening size for this one, so that the particles within this range you will try not to pass through that opening. If you are able to do that, then keep it as elongated particles. We will be denoting it as elongated particles. Okay. So now, before going further, we'll be discussing something regarding elongation index and flakiness index, flaky particles and elongation particles. When to use this and when it is not desired. So why do we need to conduct this test, flakiness or elongation of any particle? Why? So if you have the same question like me, then focus on this. Whenever we are constructing a highway, so if it is the pavement, so two types of pavement, I think by this time you should know that. One is the rigid pavement and another one is the flexible pavement. So generally you will be using bituminous pavement, also called bituminous, and this is the pavement used constructed using concrete. So if it is bituminous and flexible, in two cases, whenever we are creating concrete pavements or rigid pavements, we need to create concrete mix using what? You know, we have cement, we have coarse aggregate, we have fine aggregate. All these three, using water, we'll have to mix this, blend this thing. And while blending, there is a term, you know what is workability. So workability is the term that is known. So whenever we are working with concrete, this workability is expected. So if you cannot mix it properly, you will say this is less workable concrete. And if you can easily mix the blends, easily blend these aggregates together using cement, then you will be denoting it as workable concrete. So while from the aggregate point of view, if the particles are rounded, it will give you a good workability indeed. But if you see the particles are flaky, flaky means what? Flaky is very flake in shape, or if you say the particles are very elongated like this. So whenever this type of particles are there within the mix of the concrete, you will find it less workable. You cannot mix this concrete properly with cement and coarse aggregate just because of this particle sizes. It will give you a less workable concrete, and in terms it will impair the long-term durability of the concrete. So there is a possibility for cracking or shrinkage crack within the particle whenever the pavement is constructed using this type of aggregates if it is a rigid pavement. So flaky particles and elongated particles are not desired expected in general in case of concrete pavements or rigid pavements whenever we are working with. And in case of bituminous mix as well, if I say for bituminous mix, so in case of bituminous mix, if we are using flaky particles, this kind of flaky particles, if we use in the roadway construction, flaky particles are there, say for example, then what will happen? Whenever a wheel load will be upon this, you see, whenever a wheel load, it will be cracked. So flaky particles are liable to break up whenever and disintegrating. As we know, for flexible pavement, integrity is mostly important. If the integrity, if we the combined action is very whenever rolling the pavement with roller after construction, during the construction process of bituminous pavement, if the roller is rolled upon this pavement, these particles are likely to be breaked up, and as a result you will see that your pavement will be looking like this, or it may be disintegrated in a manner. So if you know the pavement distresses, different type of pavement distresses for flexible and for rigid pavements, you will be able to know that what problems it might create whenever you will be using flaky particles, or whenever you will be using elongated particles in terms of construction while constructing any pavement. So that's why we need to conduct these two tests, and also the angularity test as well. We will be discussing about angularity in the next class, inshallah. After we'll be discussing about that property. So now for the time being, we have learned that if the elongated particles and also the flaky particles are not desired, So as these two particles are not desired, so we will be trying that our elongation index or flakiness index of the aggregates should be as low as possible. And what is the usual value? It must be, someone says it must be less than 25%, the elongation, both the flakiness and elongation index. Both these two indices should be less than 25%, and it is better if it is less than 15%. That will be very good for construction process. So there will be specific direction whenever you are a site engineer and you have some direction. You should have some directions that for this pavement construction, the elongation or flakiness index of this particle should be less than this one, or there should be a specified range like 10 to 12%, and according to that you will be conducting the test using your lab, or you will be sending this to IoT lab or wet lab wherever directed from the authority. Then after the test, if you find that the satisfactory result has been obtained with a tolerance range, then you will authorize, finally accept this sample for the construction of the pavement. So both prior to the construction, during construction and post construction period, we need to conduct all these tests of aggregates. So however, the apparatus, the main apparatus, you know, the British sieve and the these two apparatus for two tests we need for conducting these two tests. And after that, whenever once you have conducted you have identified all the separated all the particles, I will be creating I should be creating a chart to make you understand about this. First, to say about this, the total say I am giving example for flaky particles. If it is flaky particles, so the total flaky particles are there, the total non-flaky particles are there. So these two will be adding up to the total mass, and that will be denoted as M. And for each of the retained class sieve, for these ranges, these sieves, you will be putting the values of flaky particles or the retained particles. First of all, retained particle aggregates in each of these sieves, and after that the total summation, you know, we will be denoting it as M1 or W1, whatever you say W1 is the total weight retained on these sieves, total retained sieves, excluding 63 millimeter as it is passing through this, so retaining in all those including 6.3 millimeter, that is W1. And if you see, we'll be creating a percentage column for all these sieves as well. With respect to W1, if we see any of this sieve contains less than 5% of W1, in any case we will be totally ignoring that particular row, and we'll be treating the remaining sieves as for the calculation of our index. So again, after reducing these rows, whichever will be finding that is less than 5%, we will be getting another column, and summing up the accepted columns, you will be getting another total weight, that will be W2. And with respect to W2 and deducting those columns, the remaining flaky particle sieves will be summing up. Those amount summing up will give you W3, and that W3 by W2 will be giving you the actual flakiness index of your sample. So to give example, I will be creating a chart now. I am now creating a chart for your convenience. So I am inserting a table here. So this one is the table. So for each column we'll be using different properties. Okay, so we will be denoting this as the sieve size, as millimeter, and this one being the gauge size in millimeter, or let's ignore the gauge size for our calculation. We don't need this for the time being. So rather, let's use this, the weight of the material retained in this. So let's take it as gram, then the percent of the material retained, then we'll be checking and checking 5% or not, and this being the flaky particles in gram. So will be the sieve sizes will be 63, this will be 50, this will be 37.5, this will be 20, this will be 28, this will be 20, this will be 14, this will be 10, and this will be finally 6.3. okay, so for each of this sieve will be taking the weight of material retained. So if you, and before going into this, we should discuss about a thing that whenever we'll be taking weight, we'll be taking weights using balance. Okay, so whenever we'll be taking weight, so up to which decimal will be taking. So in generally I will be giving you a guideline that you will be taking the rounded gram value. So if you are taking 1017.2, so please round it like 1017 gram as it is, or if it is greater than 5, equal or greater than 5, then take it as 1018 gram. So whatever you take, please take the rounded gram value, so that will be giving you exact value, I think. So it will not be creating any complexity, so please take it up to rounded gram value. So another thing I should be mentioning here, so there are some ranges for these sieve sizes for which you might be needing subdivision. Subdivision might be needed if this mass, the retained mass in any sieve, any BSc for these two experiments exceeds the specific mass value, the range for this. For example, if it is 50 millimeter British sieve, the mass retained, the weight retained of the material should not be greater than 50 kg. For 37.5, it should not be exceeding for 37.5 millimeter, it should not be exceeding 37.5 kg. So sorry, not 37, it will be not, should not be exceeding 35 kg, should not be exceeding 35 kg. So there are some ranges like this. So if this exceeds 50 millimeter sieve retain value of the weight exceeds 50 kg, then there might be required a subdivision, and this is something complex which will not be facing we think. But if we face this kind of situation when we might be needing subdivision, subdivision should be such like it should not be, each subdivision must not contain less than half of this range. So for example, if in 50 millimeter we are needing subdivision using 51 kg, then each subdivision should not be less than 25 kg each. So you cannot take 30 kg one and another one as only 21 kg. Each subdivision must be greater than half of the specified size of this for this subdivision. So from there you can get an idea how many subdivisions might be required. So if it is greater than 50, only one subdivision, that is two divisions might be enough. If it is greater than 75 kg for 50 millimeter sieve, then you can divide it into 3. So that's how we can proceed. So however, the subdivision is specifically needed so that the sieve analysis we are doing should be done in a proper way, so that due to the amount of aggregates within that sieve, such kind of situation doesn't arise, so that the sieve which the particles which is actually less than 50 millimeter are not passing through it due to improper blending. So that's why if it is greater than this size, then a subdivision might give you a good value. While conducting the test, there will not be any probability for any particles which is actually less than 50 millimeter but not passing through this 50 millimeter. In case of 37 millimeter, if it is greater than 35, you should subdivide it in that case, just because there will be then almost no probability of any particle which will not be passing through 37.5 millimeter, but which is actually less than the diameter is of those particles, size of those particles are less than those. There will not be any probability in that case if we subdivide it. So that's why this usual range is used. So subdivision means that is you will have to conduct the same test using then separating two samples in each. Say if it is 50, then you will be dividing 25 and again analyzing the same procedure again to get the sieve analysis, this result of this wet retained values, and finally combine all those values in such a way and such a correction factor will be applied, so that if those particles 50 millimeter, if it is divided into 2, 25, if it were conducted together, then it would have been given the value obtained now, it should be the same. So in such a way we'll have to apply the correction factor in that cases. So I'm not going to discuss about that further. Maybe we will not be phasing that factor in usual manner. So however, just for your concern, according to the standard, one thing I have forgot to mention, that is we are conducting this test according to the British standard of 812, according to the British standard of 812, and to be more specific, we are conducting this test according to the BS 812 part 1. Both elongation and Flakiness Index are covered within this standard. So however, so now what we are talking about this weight of the material retained. So I might be needing an additional column here that will give you the total, or any pen if it is there, it is a pen. Say if a pen is there, it might be needing that. So total. So remember this. Okay, before we go there further, say there is 502, 102, let's round it, 105, you might be getting 200, you might be getting 197, you might be getting again 203, you might be getting here maybe getting 40, 50, you may be getting 30, you may be getting 100, and finally you may be getting 65. So that is what the material retained. So first of all, we will be deducting what the sieve size 63 from here, just because the retained material should be starting from 50 up to 63, and also we will be deducting this one from our calculation. Now we will be summing up the total value, and this will be denoting as we will be denoting it as W1, and that will be what will be the sum of this. Let's calculate. So we have 105, we have 200, we have 197, we have 203, we have 50, we have 30, we have 100. So total of 885. For example, just for example, we have taken this 885, and with respect to all of this, we will be getting the percent amount. So we'll be getting the percent amount, like 105 will be 11.86%. Okay, so this 200 will be 22.6%. okay, this 197 will be 22.26%. no problem at all. So this 203 will be 22.93%. this 50 will be 5.64%. 65 actually. This 30 will be 3.39%. this 100 will be 11.23% actually, you can say, and this will being the 100% for us. So so if we calculate all these values, now let's see what is less than 5%. So I am not rounding it to 2 digit, just ignore this. I am not rounding all this up to 2 digit. If necessary, you might be rounding it to 2 digits, so that 100% actually you will be getting 100%. However, and also we are getting some flaky particles. First of all, we will not be conducting flaky particles for these two. We'll be checking flaky particles for these also only. So in this case, flaky particles, say for example we have from 55, in this case 35, in this case 99, in this case 121, in this case for example we've got 12, in this case 10, in this case we have got 55. So that's how we have got the flaky particles. How we have got it? We have tried to pass through that gauge, that thickness gauge, and whichever we have found that we are being able to pass it through, we have identified those as flaky particles, and in returns finally we have weighted all those individually. So individually you need to measure the weight of each of those particle range about the flaky particles. Why? Now we will see. You see the percent, this is actually percent retained. You see all these are greater than 5% except this one. So as it is less than 5%, we will be totally eliminating this row from our calculation, and now we will be calculating the remaining portion. So this is if I say this passes, all these passes, and this one not, that's why we have deducted it. So W1, from W1 we will be getting W2, just deducting 30 from that, and from there we will be getting 855 gram. For example, from this, if I deduct 30 from 885, then we will be getting 855 gram. And now flaky particles, these flaky particles W3 will be summing all these except this 10. So the addition of all these flaky particles, 55, 35, 99, 121, 12 plus 55 will give you 337. So we'll be getting 337 from here. So 337 will be our gram of flaky particles we have obtained. So the flakiness index, Fi, if I say flakiness index, will be W3 by W2 multiplied by 100%. That will be 337 divided by 88. So it will be 855 multiplied by 100. And finally, you will be getting this result as 337 divided by 855 multiplied by 100, 39.42%. And while reporting it as flakiness index, you will be rounding it to nearest whole number, that is 39% is our flakiness index, and that is the reported. And also the sieve analysis should be reported whenever reporting flakiness index. So it will be our flakiness index, and as it is greater than 25%, for this sample we will be not recommending this sample for our construction, just because this is very much higher in percentage, which will in turn degrade the quality of the pavements. So that's how we should be proceeding in this case. Also in the case of elongation index, we will be going for similar thing while calculating. Just only the difference will be there. You will get the elongation particles in gram. And also remember, this one sometimes we get maybe getting this value is greater than this one. No, in that case, please keep remembering this thing, that this value cannot be greater than this one, just because from this sample you are getting this value. In no cases you will be getting flaky particles for any particular range which will be greater than the weight of the material written on that range or sieve. So keep remembering this thing whenever conducting test, so that you are not getting any abnormal values. And only difference with elongation index is you will be using elongated particles in case of flaky particles, and you will be using the length gauge in case of thickness gauge whenever conducting this test. So by this time, I think I have discussed all these things. In quiz I might be giving you a chart like this and try to find out the flakiness index. If some data are missing, you need to calculate these things, and finally obtain the flakiness index of that particular sample. So I hope you have enjoyed this class. So for next class we'll be going for the angularity number, which is another indicator of the shape of the aggregate particles. Then after this we will be getting into the bituminous materials test. So thank you for today.